We have a classroom full of students and they're going home and practicing really hard every night and they're playing through the music the best they can and they're logging down their 30 minutes in their practice reports to give back to you on Monday, but for some reason you show up in the classroom and it's a mess. They're all playing at different times, nobody's staying together. What's going on? How do we fix this problem? If you watched my previous video on technique building, you might think, okay, well, I need to develop some kind of accountability measure for staying together, for having the same tempo. And you're right, you're absolutely right. But how do you do that? Well, if we look here, there's a piano part, and you can go out and go to your marching band director and get 4 JBL SR 385Ps, put 2 in the front and 2 in the back, and then get 2 818 SP subwoofers. Why 2 SP subwoofers? Well, because you have the budget for it. And then you're going to want to get your Roland FP30X and connect it to this gigantic setup, and you're going to crank it up to 11, and you're just going to bang out these chords with the orchestra. They have no choice but to stay together because, how could they play anything else with that much sound coming into their ears? Even if you had 19th century Beethoven in your class, it would be loud enough for Beethoven to stay with your group too. That's how loud these speakers are going to go. And you're just going to bang it out, right? Well, maybe that's not the answer, okay? Maybe that's going to help you for Gaelic Castle, but what about another piece of music? What if it doesn't have a piano part? Well, that's fine. We've got metronomes, right? Just get the metronome and plug it into your setup and crank that up to 11 and, just pound it so hard to where they can feel the metronomic forces in their chest and it's compressing their lungs and they can't even really breathe well. Well, okay, so what if the students don't stay with the metronome? So you're gonna go and buy an 18-inch baton and you're gonna wave it around as big as you can like you're an aircraft marshal directing airplanes on the runway. No, you're on runway 6, go over this way. Right? Well, maybe that doesn't work either. Maybe you're doing all that and they're still going their own independent tempos. So what's wrong and how do we create some accountability where the students will actually stay together, not just in Gaelic Castle, but in all the other pieces of music that we play? Right? So if there's a teacher that says, hey, my group's not staying together, can you come in and can you listen and try to figure out what's going on? I say, sure, and I show up. The first thing I do is turn off all that stuff. I turn off all the background tracks, the metronome, the 18-inch batons, all that kind of stuff. I just turn it off and I say, ready, go, and I just have them start playing. I watch them, okay? So when they're playing and they're not staying together, is it because they're rushing or dragging? Well, if it's beginners, the answer is almost always rushing, right? They're almost always taking off. Even second-year students, the answer is almost always rushing. That's what's going on. So who is rushing? And if they're playing and they're not staying with the metronome, it's because they're not following the metronome. It's because they're following somebody else. They're following the sound, who's playing first, and then everybody's trying to catch up to the person who's rushing the most. So if you can isolate the student that's kind of leading the charge as far as rushing goes, maybe you can fix that problem. So look around and try to look at their bows and figure out whose bow is moving quicker than everybody else's. And you're looking around and sure enough, it's Timmy. And you're like, Timmy, oh my goodness. Well, let's look even closer at Timmy, not just that Timmy's playing a little faster than everybody else. Let's look exactly at what Timmy is doing. Is Timmy's bow straight? Is Timmy holding his bow right? No, Timmy's doing none of these things correctly. Timmy is not very detail-oriented and it's just kind of trucking right along. So we need to take Timmy and we need to fix those things and we need to slow Timmy down by having Timmy pay more attention to the technique. And when Timmy slows down, everybody else is going to stop rushing. And so you might have somebody else that starts leading the rush. Okay, well, look at them. Are they paying attention to their technique? No. So slow everybody down by reinforcing the technique. And that's going to get everybody to play the same tempo because when we're rushing, we're usually skipping steps. Which steps are we skipping? Well, are we gripping the string? Are we setting the bow correctly? Like, what are we leaving out that's making us rush? Sometimes our students are rushing because they're not playing the right part of the bow. For upper strings, that tends to be towards the tip. If they're playing towards the tip, they tend to rush more. For the lower strings, towards the frog, they tend to rush more. And it's usually because they don't have that wrist flexibility. There's usually some tension somewhere in the hand, so they're compensating with the shoulder, and they're just bowing all over the place, and they're not really staying together very well. So the goal is to get your students to be more detail-oriented, and that will make them more conscientious, not just about their technique, but about where they're playing. It might also get them, especially if you're doing peer-to-peer coaching and you're having half your students play and the other half watching, you're getting your students to watch each other's bows, and maybe they'll even start watching you, and they'll start matching each other rather than just doing their own thing. Fix the fundamentals to fix the rushing, all right? And that's especially true in pizzicato. So we have some pizzicato sections here, and those are the sections that like to rush a whole bunch. Pizzicato likes to rush, and that's not just in your little orchestra, but in every orchestra ever. Pizzicato tends to rush. Whenever you hear pizzicato, even from some great orchestras, it's not quite together, and when it's not quite together, it's not because they're dragging, it's because somebody's a little bit ahead and they let go of the string a little bit too soon. So break that pizzicato down into steps, okay? Grab the string, pull the string back, and release the string. So we have two basic rhythms here for playing pizzicato. So like at 35, we have quarter rest, pizz, quarter rest, pizz, and then we have half note pizzas, so half note, half note. So we could think of these almost as like a quarter note rest, quarter note rest. And that's kind of how we break it up in the teaching companion. So in the teaching companion, that's how we teach it. We have the grab, pull, pizz, grab, pull, pizz. So during the rest, they're grabbing and they're pulling as if they were eighth notes, and then they're releasing on beat 2. And the other rhythm is to pizz, then grab, pull, pizz, then grab, pull. And so when they go back to the actual rhythm of pizz, 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 when they're not pizzing, they're grabbing and pulling. So those extra steps are creating extra time, so they're not rushing. If they're rushing, they're skipping one of those steps, either the grab or the pull or both. Maybe they're just swatting at the string like a cat playing with a ball of yarn, and that's not what you want. You want them to grab, pull, and release. Be very detail-oriented and be very conscientious about their technique, so they're conscientious about the tempo. In the next video, we're going to talk about style. There are some cool stylistic features here in Gaelic Castle, and we want to get our students to start thinking about musical things, you know, like accents and slurs and all these great things. So how are we going to teach our students to be musical? I'm going to go over some strategies in the next video. I hope to see you then.